The Valorian research station floated silently in the black space of the Kepler expanse. It looked like a giant silver flower with 5 petals spreading out from a central hub, with countless lights blinking from within its metal body. Inside this station, far away from any sun or planet, scientists worked on a project that had taken months to complete. Dr. Teo stood in the main laboratory, staring at his computer screen. He was a tall Valorian with smooth blue skin and silver eyes that seemed to glow in the dim light. His fingers moved quickly across the holographic keyboard, entering commands and checking data. He had been working since early morning, and now the sun outside the station's view window had disappeared hours ago, leaving only the endless darkness of space. His assistant, HFY, sat at another workstation nearby. She was younger than Teo, with shorter hair that showed the marks of her working through the night. Both scientists looked tired, but their eyes remained sharp and focused. They were xenobiologists, which meant they studied life forms from different planets and worlds. Their job was to take genetic samples from thousands of different species and organize them into groups. This helped other scientists understand how life grew and changed across the entire galaxy. "We have finished processing the samples from Sector 7, HFY said, not looking away from her screen. Her voice was calm, but there was something like excitement hiding underneath. "The data looks clean. No corruption in the files." Teo nodded. He moved to the large storage unit in the corner of the lab. It was a tall machine with many small glass containers inside, each one holding a different genetic sample. The containers glowed with soft blue light. These samples came from hundreds of different planets, and each one told a story about the creatures that lived there. "Good," Teo replied. "We need to start working on the samples from that little blue and green planet, the one that is very far from the main trade routes." "Earth?" HFY asked, finally turning to look at him. "Yes, Earth," Teo confirmed. He walked over to a special storage container and carefully removed a single sample. It was small, almost invisible. This tiny piece of genetic material had come from a creature that lived on a planet that most Valorians had never heard of. It had taken their probe ships 3 years just to reach Earth and collect this sample without being seen. HFY stood up and walked over to watch what Teo was doing. She was curious about Earth. She had read some files about it. The planet had billions of living creatures on it, but only one type of creature had built cities and machines. Those creatures were called humans. Teo placed the Earth sample into the analysis machine. The machine was large and made soft humming sounds as it powered up. It had many arms and lights inside it, all designed to study the smallest building blocks of life, the DNA. DNA is like an instruction book that tells a body how to grow and what it should look like. "This will take a few hours," Teo said, moving back to his chair. "The machine needs to read all the information in the human DNA and compare it to all the other species we have studied." HFY went back to her station. She decided to do some reading while they waited. She pulled up information about Earth and humans on her screen. She learned that humans were medium-sized creatures. They stood on 2 legs. They had only 2 arms. They lived for about 80 to 85 years. They needed to eat other living things to survive. What interested her most was that they had built a very advanced civilization. They had machines, governments, and complex social systems. Hours passed. The laboratory was quiet except for the soft sounds of computers working. Sometimes Teo would look up from his work and glance at the DNA analysis machine, wondering what it would find. Finally, after much time had passed, the machine made a different sound, a quick beeping noise. "The analysis is complete," the computer said in a smooth, mechanical voice. The computer's name was Nexus. It was very intelligent and could process information much faster than any Valorian ever could. Both scientists looked up immediately. Teo and HFY moved to the main screen where Nexus would show its results. the data began to appear, displaying numbers, graphs, and colorful images showing the structure of human DNA. Teo read through the information carefully. He was impressed by how healthy the genetic sample was. The DNA was very strong and showed no defects. But then he noticed something else. He noticed that Nexus was running the human DNA through something called the Predator Identification Matrix. This was a special program that looked at how dangerous different creatures were. It examined things like teeth, muscles, brain size, and how well the creature could hunt other animals. "Why is it running that analysis?" HFY asked, confused. "We do not need to know if humans are predators. We have other ways to classify them." Teo frowned. He did not have an answer. He had not told Nexus to run that program, but Nexus was very intelligent. Sometimes it made its own decisions about what information would be useful to study. The results began to appear on the screen. Teo's eyes widened as he read the numbers. His face turned a pale shade of green, which meant he was surprised or worried. "What is it?" HFY asked, stepping closer to the screen. Before Teo could answer, Nexus made a sound. Not a beeping sound this time, but a voice. It spoke the same way it always did, in a calm and normal tone, as if it was saying something very ordinary and not strange at all. "Which predator are we identifying today?" Nexus asked. The laboratory became completely silent. HFY felt her heart begin to beat faster. She looked at Teo's face and saw fear there. Real fear. "Run that analysis again," Teo said quietly. "Something must be wrong." Nexus ran the program again. It took only a few minutes this time. When the results came back, they were the same numbers, the same measurements, the same frightening conclusions. HFY moved even closer to the screen. She began to read the data herself. What she saw made her hands shake. According to Nexus, humans had teeth designed for tearing flesh. Their bodies were perfectly designed for hunting. Their brains were structured in ways that showed they were natural hunters. Their muscles were built for speed and strength. And perhaps most frightening of all, their genetic code showed they had something in their nature that made them want to hunt, to kill, to dominate. "This cannot be right," Teo whispered. But even as he said it, he knew that Nexus was never wrong about these things. Nexus had analyzed thousands of species, and it was always accurate. HFY looked at the final number on the screen. It showed that humans scored higher on the predator scale than almost any other species in the entire database. Only one legendary species, the Vorgathi, which had disappeared thousands of years ago, had scored higher. And everyone knew that the Vorgathi had nearly destroyed the entire galaxy before they finally disappeared. "We need to report this," HFY said, but her voice was uncertain. She was not sure if reporting this was the right thing to do. Teo did not answer. He was still staring at the screen, at the words Nexus had spoken just moments before. "Which predator are we identifying today?" He knew, with a terrible certainty, that this question would change everything. HFY could not sleep. She had tried to rest for 3 hours, but her mind would not stop thinking about the data. She kept seeing the numbers and graphs from the Nexus analysis. She kept hearing the question the computer had asked, "Which predator are we identifying today?" At last, she gave up trying to sleep. She dressed in her work clothes and made her way through the quiet corridors of the research station. Most of the other scientists and workers were asleep. Only a few lights were on, creating long shadows on the metal walls. HFY's footsteps made soft sounds on the floor as she walked toward the main laboratory. When she arrived at the laboratory, she found that Teo was already there. He was sitting at his desk, surrounded by data screens showing information about humans. He had not changed his clothes. He did not look like he had slept either. "I could not stop thinking about it," HFY said, sitting down at her workstation. "I decided to run some independent research." Teo looked at her with tired eyes. "What have you found?" I accessed the historical records from Earth, HFY explained. She began pulling up files on her screen. The records that we collected from their planet years ago. I have been reviewing them. She showed Teo what she had discovered. The records included thousands of years of human history. The information showed that humans had hunted many different types of animals. But more than that, the records showed something even more disturbing. Throughout their history, humans had also hunted and killed other humans, repeatedly, in enormous numbers. Look at this, HFY said, pointing to a graph showing human wars. They have fought wars thousands of times, not with small groups but with hundreds of thousands of people fighting against each other. And look at these numbers. Millions of humans died in just a few conflicts. Teo leaned forward, reading the information carefully. The data made him feel sick. He had studied many species, but he had never seen a pattern like this before. Most predators on most planets hunted other creatures, but humans seemed to be hunters of everything, including their own kind. There is more, HFY continued. She pulled up another section of the historical records. This one showed how humans had treated other animals on their planet. Humans have hunted other species to extinction. They have taken species that lived in nature and domesticated them. Then they have bred them and eventually eaten them. Cows, pigs, chickens, fish, thousands of different animals all used for food. Teo closed his eyes. He was beginning to understand why Nexus had asked that question. The computer was not confused. It was simply stating a fact that should have been obvious to any intelligent being who looked at the data. We need to talk to someone else about this, Teo said finally. We cannot keep this information to ourselves. But who? HFY asked. Who can we tell? If we report this to the Galactic Council, they will see what we have seen. They will understand that humans are the most dangerous species we have discovered in decades. Teo thought for a long moment. We will tell Dr. Minho. He is arriving today for his inspection visit. He is a senior scientist. He will know what we should do. Over the next several hours, HFY gathered more information. She created a detailed report showing all the evidence that humans were apex predators. She prepared the data in a way that made the facts very clear and very hard to argue with. She included information about human anatomy, their hunting abilities, their history of warfare, and their psychology. The report was thorough and detailed. When Dr. Minho arrived at the research station later that day, Teo invited him directly to the laboratory without wasting any time on normal greetings. Minho was an older Valorian with darker blue skin and wise eyes. He had been working for the Galactic Council for many years. He knew about research stations and scientists and how important discoveries were handled. We have found something unexpected, Teo said, as Minho entered the laboratory. We need your advice. They showed Minho everything. They showed him the initial nexus analysis. They showed him the historical data from Earth. They showed him HFY's detailed report. They explained how humans had hunted other species and how they had fought wars with each other. Minho sat down and read through all the information very slowly and carefully. His expression remained calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. When he finally looked up from the screens, his face had turned a light shade of gray, which meant he was very troubled. This data is concerning, Minho said quietly. But I need to understand something. Have humans ever stopped their aggressive behaviors? Do they have any natural instincts toward peace? HFY looked uncertain. The records show that they have built civilization and created laws and governments, so they must have some control over their violent urges. But they have never truly stopped, Minho said, studying the data again. Look at these wars. Look at how recent some of them are. They are still fighting. They are still killing. Their entire history is written in blood. Teo felt a terrible weight settle on his shoulders. He realized what Minho was thinking. He was thinking the same thing. If we report this to the council, Minho said slowly, they will not hesitate. They have procedures for handling species that pose a danger to galactic peace. I have seen it happen before. A species is identified as a threat. Immediately, the Council implements what they call containment protocols. What does that mean? HFY asked, though something in her voice suggested she already knew the answer. It means Earth will be cut off from the rest of the galaxy, Minho explained. No trade, no communications, no help if they face a natural disaster. The planet will be isolated completely, and if the Council votes that humans are too dangerous to allow to exist, they might authorize something far worse. The three scientists looked at each other. They each understood the terrible responsibility that had fallen on them. They had discovered something that could change the future of an entire species, and they had to decide what to do with that knowledge. We need to think about this carefully, Teo said. We cannot make this decision quickly. We need to review all the data multiple times. We need to be absolutely sure that we are reading the information correctly. But in his heart, Teo already knew that they were reading it correctly. The evidence was too clear. The pattern was too obvious. Humans were predators, dangerous predators, and that simple fact was going to create problems that none of them could yet imagine. 3 days had passed since Dr. Minho arrived at the research station. During those 3 days, the three scientists had done nothing but study the human DNA data and the historical records from Earth. They ate very little. They slept very little. They seemed to be living in a state of constant worry and confusion. They had all reached the same conclusion that Teo and HFY had come to. Humans were apex predators. There was no argument about it. The data was clear and undeniable. But now they faced a problem that was even more difficult than discovering the truth. What should they do with this information? We must report it, HFY said. She had said this many times over the past 3 days. Hiding the truth from the Council would be wrong. They need to know what we have discovered. If we report it, humans will be destroyed, Minho said. He had also repeated this many times. The Council will not take any chances with a species like this. We are talking about the extinction of an entire civilization. Billions of lives. Teo sat between them, trying to think of a third way. A way that did not involve either hiding the truth or causing the destruction of all humanity. But he could not find any solution that satisfied him. Then the communication system in the laboratory made a loud beeping sound. A message came through from the Galactic Council headquarters. Teo opened the message with a sense of dread. His fears were justified. The message was from Dr. Shinnei. She was the Council's lead geneticist. She was known throughout the galaxy as a scientist who asked very difficult questions and who followed the rules very strictly. She believed that science should be used to protect the galaxy from danger, and she was arriving at the research station in exactly 3 days for a complete audit of all their findings. When HFY read the message, she turned very pale. 3 days, she whispered. We have 3 days to prepare. Prepare what? Minho asked, though his face showed that he understood perfectly well. We cannot hide this data. Shinnei is an expert. She will see through any lies we create. Then we change how we present it, Minho said suddenly, standing up from his chair. We do not change the data itself. We never lie to the Council. But we can change how we explain the data. We can present it differently. We can make it seem less certain. We can suggest that more research is needed. Teo looked at Minho with surprise. This did not sound like the careful and honorable scientist he knew. Is that not lying? Teo asked. Just a different kind of lying? It is survival, Minho said quietly. We are talking about billions of lives. That changes things. Sometimes we must bend the rules to save a civilization. No, HFY said firmly. I will not help with this. We must tell the truth. If the Council decides to destroy humanity, then at least we will know we did what was right. Teo made his decision. We will prepare a complete and honest report, he said. but we will also prepare what I will call a preliminary assessment. This assessment will present our findings but will emphasize that we need to study more data before we reach any final conclusions. It will be truthful, but it will ask for time and additional research before the council makes any decisions. That will not work, Minho said. Shin-A will demand to see the raw data. She will see the nexus analysis. Then we show her, Teo said. But we explain that the analysis from Nexus is based on genetic data alone. We explain that genetics do not tell the complete story of what a species is. We explain that humans may be genetically predatory, but that they are also sapient beings. They can make choices. They can grow and change. For the next 2 days, the team worked on preparing their presentations. They created the preliminary assessment, which presented the facts, but encouraged the council to move slowly and carefully. They also began to prepare for a deeper analysis. HFY had a new idea. She wanted to look at human culture more carefully. She wanted to study human art, philosophy, and literature. During this time, a young intern named Ji-Woo came to work in the laboratory. Ji-Woo was a junior scientist who had just started his first job. He was excited about research and eager to learn from the senior scientists. Taiyo asked Ji-Woo to help HFY with a research project. He told him to study human culture and see if there was anything interesting there. Neither Taiyo nor HFY told Ji-Woo why they wanted this research. They just asked him to study it and report what he found. Ji-Woo began to read through the human records. He read human poetry. He read human philosophy. He read stories about human love, human sacrifice, and human dreams. At first, he just thought it was interesting as a cultural curiosity. But the more he read, the more he became affected by what he found. One day, Ji-Woo came to HFY with questions. "I have been reading these human philosophers," he said. "They write about something called justice, and honor, and love. Why would a species that is purely a predator write about these things? Why would they create such beautiful poetry if they are just animals that hunt and kill?" HFY looked at the young intern, and she realized that he had stumbled upon something important, something that neither she nor Teo nor Minho had fully considered. "That is a very good question," she said slowly. "I do not have a good answer for it yet." On the morning that Dr. Shin-A was set to arrive, Teo called his team together one final time. HFY, Minho, and Ji-Woo all stood with him in the laboratory. Around them were all the screens and computers that held the truth about humanity, the truth that would change everything. "Whatever happens today," Teo said, "we will tell the truth. We will answer her questions honestly. And we will trust that if we are truthful, the right decision will be made." But even as he said this, Teo was not sure he believed it. He had studied science his entire life. Science was about facts and data. But this situation was not really about science. It was about survival. It was about whether an entire species would be allowed to exist or would be destroyed. And he did not know if facts and data would be enough to save them. Dr. Shin-A arrived at the research station exactly on time. She was a Valorian woman who looked younger than most senior scientists. She had bright silver eyes that seemed to see everything. The moment she entered the laboratory, Teo felt that this woman would not be easy to mislead or confuse. "Show me everything," she said simply. No greetings, no small talk, just a direct command. For the next 6 hours, the team showed her all their data. They showed her the nexus analysis. They showed her the historical records from Earth. They showed her HFY's detailed report about human predatory nature. They explained how humans hunted other species. They explained how humans had fought wars throughout their history. They explained how humans continued to kill and dominate other humans, even in their most recent times. Shin-A listened without speaking. She read the screens. She asked questions but did not seem surprised by any of the answers. She examined the data with an intensity that made everyone in the room nervous. When they finished presenting all the information, Shin-Ai sat quietly for a long time. Then she stood up and walked to a viewing window that looked out at the stars. She placed her hand on the glass and stared at the darkness of space. "You think I am going to recommend that the Council destroy Earth?" she said. It was not a question. "We believe that is what the Council will do," Teo said carefully. "Based on this data, Earth represents a threat to galactic peace." Shin-Ai turned to look at him. Her expression was strange. It was not angry or sad. It was something more like understanding, like she knew something that they did not. "Come with me," she said. "All of you. We need to go to the data archive." The team followed her through the corridors of the research station. They went deep into the center of the station, to a place where the most important records were kept. The archive was a huge room filled with thousands of data storage devices. It contained the complete genetic records of every species that the Valorians had ever studied. Shin-Ai walked to a specific section and began pulling up files. On the screens, DNA data appeared. This was data about other species. But as Teo looked at the information, he felt confused. These genetic profiles looked very similar to human DNA. Very similar indeed. "The first species," Shin-Ai said, pointing to the data, "was discovered 3,000 years ago. They called themselves the Vorgathi. They had a genetic predatory profile that scored 98.5 on the predator scale." Teo and the others stared at the screen. This was the legendary species that had nearly destroyed the galaxy. "The second species," Shin-Ai continued, "was discovered 2,000 years ago. They called themselves the Krell. They scored 97.2 on the predator scale." She pulled up more data, and more, and more. "I have found 17 species with genetic predatory profiles very similar to or higher than humans," Shin-Ai said. She turned to look at the scientists. 17 species with high predatory potential. And yet here you all are, alive. The galaxy is still here. Civilization is still functioning." "How is that possible?" Minho asked. He looked shocked. "Because," Shin-Ai said, "there is a difference between being genetically predatory and being a threat to galactic peace. These species, the Vorgathi, the Krell, and many others, they all faced the same choice that humanity faces now. They had to decide what they would do with their predatory nature." She walked to another section of the archive and brought up more data. This data showed historical records and behavioral information about these predatory species. "The Vorgathi used their predatory instincts for conquest," Shin-Ai explained. "They hunted other species. They conquered other civilizations. They wanted to dominate everything. And so the Council was forced to contain them. Eventually, the Vorgathi destroyed themselves in their own wars. They are now extinct." She showed them another species. The Krell, on the other hand, used their predatory nature differently. They directed it outward. Instead of hunting each other, they became the greatest hunters of criminals and terrorists in the galaxy. They became protectors. Today, the Krell are honored members of the Council. They are respected and valued. Teo began to understand what Shin-Ai was telling them. "So it is not whether a species is predatory," Teo said slowly. "It is what the species chooses to do with their predatory nature." "Exactly," Shin-Ai said, nodding. "I have spent most of my career studying this question. Why do some predator species become weapons of destruction while others become tools of protection? Why do some species with violent instincts choose violence while others choose peace?" "And what is the answer?" Heywan asked. Shin-Ai looked at the young scientist. "The answer is philosophy, culture, choice. A species can be genetically predatory and still choose to build a civilization based on cooperation instead of conquest. A species can have violent instincts and still choose to write poetry instead of wage war." She pulled up the human cultural records that Jiwoo had been studying. On the screens appeared human poems, human art, and human philosophy. "This is what humans have created," Shin-Ei said, reading through some of the material. "This is their philosophy. This is their art. This is their attempt to understand what it means to be good and to do good in the world. And they did this while also being predators, while also having violent instincts, while also having made many terrible mistakes." She turned to look at all of them. "This is why humans are so dangerous and so valuable at the same time. They are predators who can think. They are killers who can be philosophers. They are dangerous beings who can choose to be kind." "What do you recommend?" Teo asked. "Should we report this to the council?" Shin-Ei was quiet for a moment. "Yes, we will report it, but not as a threat to be contained. We will report it as a species with potential. We will recommend that the council consider guided contact with human leaders. We will suggest that humanity be given a chance to prove that their philosophical traditions are strong enough to control their predatory instincts." Minho looked worried. "The council will never agree to that. They are too afraid of unknown dangers." "Then we will show them the data about the Krell," Shin-Ei said. "We will remind them that every great alliance in galactic history was built by taking chances on species that seemed dangerous. And we will tell them that humans may be the next step in galactic evolution. They may be the next species that learns to transform their nature and become something greater." Tayo felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. Hope because it seemed like there might be another way to save humanity. Fear because this plan seemed impossible. But as he looked at Shin-Ei's confident face, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, it could work. The Galactic Council chambers were not what Teo had expected. He thought they would be cold and harsh, like a courtroom where criminals were judged. Instead, the chamber was beautiful. The walls glowed with soft blue light. There were seats for representatives from hundreds of different species. But today, only a small group had gathered. Only those who made important decisions about new discoveries. Shin-Ei stood before them, presenting the data about humans. She was a skilled speaker. She showed the predatory genetic profile. She explained why humans were dangerous. But then she did something unexpected. She showed them the data about the Vorgothi, the Krell, and all the other predatory species. She explained how some had destroyed themselves while others had become valuable members of galactic civilization. "The question before this council," Shin-Ei said, her voice steady and clear, "is not whether humans are dangerous. Of course they are dangerous. They are apex predators. But the question is whether they deserve a chance to prove that they can direct their nature toward good instead of evil." The council members discussed the matter for a long time. Some agreed with Shin-Ei. Others disagreed strongly. They said that humans were too unpredictable. They said that the risk was too great. They said that the council had a responsibility to protect the galaxy from danger. But Shin-Ei had prepared well. She had studied similar cases from galactic history. She had evidence that showed the Krell had been given a chance and had proven themselves worthy. She had data showing that species with predatory natures could become some of the most valuable members of galactic society. In the end, the council voted. It was a very close vote. But it passed. The council approved a plan for carefully controlled first contact with human leaders. But this would not be a normal first contact. This would be a special program designed to show humans that they were not alone in the galaxy and to evaluate whether humanity could be trusted. 3 months after the council's decision, the plan was being put into action. Hei-Wan volunteered to be part of the team that would meet with human leaders. She had worked with the human data the longest. She understood human culture and human history better than almost anyone else in the galaxy. She also believed that humans deserved this chance. Minho also volunteered. He had started to believe that Shin-Ei was right. He had studied more of the human philosophical records. He had become convinced that humans were not just predators. They were something more complicated and more interesting than that. Teo remained at the research station, but he made sure to send his best data and his best analysis to help Haiwan and Minho with their work. He also made sure that Jiwoo was part of the team. The young intern had learned to understand humans better than anyone else. Jiwoo would become a cultural liaison. His job would be to explain alien perspectives to the humans and to help humans understand the strange new beings they were meeting. The first human delegation arrived secretly. They came to a special location in space, far from Earth. This was a neutral location where the humans would not feel trapped or threatened. Haiwan was nervous as she waited for the humans to arrive. When they finally came through the docking tunnel, Haiwan saw them for the first time in person. Before this, she had only seen images and video recordings. But seeing real humans was different. They looked strange to her. They moved in strange ways. They had only 2 eyes, not the 4 that Valorians had. Their skin was not blue, but various shades of brown, yellow, and other colors. But when the human leaders smiled, Haiwan understood something. Humans and Valorians might look different, but they felt the same emotions. They understood friendship and curiosity. They wanted to learn and to grow. The humans were cautious at first. They did not know if they could trust these alien beings. But Haiwan and her team were patient. They shared information. They explained why they had contacted Earth. They explained what they had learned about human genetics and human history. They were completely honest. They even told the humans that they were classified as apex predators. The lead human was a woman named Dr. Yoon. She was a scientist and a leader. She listened to everything the Valorians said. She did not seem frightened or angry. She seemed thoughtful. "You are saying that you discovered we are dangerous?" Dr. Yoon asked. "And instead of destroying us, you want to work with us?" "Yes," Haiwan said. "We believe that humanity has the potential to be something great. We believe that you have the philosophical and cultural traditions to control your predatory instincts and to choose peace and cooperation instead of conquest." Dr. Yoon nodded slowly. She looked at the other humans in her delegation. Then she looked back at Haiwan. "We have made many mistakes," Dr. Yoon said. "We have fought wars. We have hunted other species to extinction. We have hurt ourselves and hurt our planet. But we have also learned. We have created laws against violence. We have written constitutions that promise freedom and justice. We have artists and philosophers who spend their lives trying to understand how to live better and be better." She paused. "We are dangerous, yes, but we are trying. We are always trying to be better than we were yesterday." Haiwan felt something warm in her chest. It was hope. Real hope that this could work. Minho stepped forward. "The Council wants to begin a program of cooperation. We want to share knowledge with you. We want to help humanity advance. But we also need to understand that this is a test. The galaxy will be watching. If humanity can prove that you can be trusted, then doors will open for you. You can join galactic civilization. You can become part of something great." "And if we fail?" Dr. Yoon asked. "Then the doors will close again," Shin-A said quietly. She was there, watching the first contact through a video screen. "And Earth will remain isolated from the rest of the galaxy." Dr. Yoon took a deep breath. "We accept. We will work with you. We will try to prove that humanity deserves a place among the stars." And in that moment, everything changed. The meeting of humans and Valorians, which should have resulted in destruction, instead became the beginning of something new, the beginning of cooperation between 2 species that were very different, but that shared something important. They both believed that the future could be better than the past.